What else is a fact is you need to click subscribe. Click on the subscribe button to Pittsburgh Sports Live. Make it easy for us to get this content, golden quality content, with or without the sun here in Pittsburgh. These dark skies, I'm looking out my window here in our Beaver County Auto studios in downtown Pittsburgh, near Market Square, up above Market Square, to be exact. Down the street. We won't tell you the exact location, though. Undisclosed. I have too many haters. I'm too much of a heel, and many of us are. So Kongursky and I would have people knocking on this door if they can get up the elevator ride, which is a little inside joke here at PSL. But click subscribe. Here it is again, another graphic for you. Pittsburgh Sports Live on YouTube. Click subscribe. Makes us automatically notify you when our content's out there, so we don't have to blast you with all of our Twitter promotion, which, speaking of Twitter promotion, follow us on Twitter at PGH Sports Live on Twitter. Follow me at Mike Asti 11 on Twitter. And what else is a fact, in addition to following us and subscribing to us and finding us on Pittsburgh Sports Live and all of our websites, Pittsburgh Sports Now, Pittsburgh Hockey Now, PGHSportsLive.com, where all this content lives, and the website that I run for this venture, is that Pitt, under Jeff Capel, Pitt on the hardwood, Pitt basketball, what's a fact, or what I'm going to say is going to be a fact, and what I'm going to predict to be a fact, is Pitt's going to beat West Virginia. Pitt's going to beat WVU in the Backyard Brawl on the hardwood, and Pitt's going to win that game on December 8th. Now, I know Pitt is the team we cover here on Pittsburgh Sports Live and Pittsburgh Sports Now, and Alan, beat writer for Pitt, covers the Pitt games home and away. You're doing a fantastic job. Got a little sunny trip there in Miami, even though it was a Pitt football loss, once the weather started getting a little snowy, frigid, and gloomy here in Pittsburgh. So it's good for him. Pitt ACC championship game, even though they're probably going to get blasted by Clemson, and we're able to take advantage of a weak conference this year. But Pitt football's doing their thing. Alan's covering it, also covering the basketball when he can, and going to go full-fledged into basketball mode once the football is over, I'm sure, and waiting for that bowl game. But even though that's all true here for us professionally, I am a West Virginia University alum. They know it. I know it. You guys all know it probably by now. I don't hide it. It's in the Twitter bio, guys. I'm a WVU alum. But regardless of whether I'm a WVU alum or I'm working for an outlet that covers Pitt or I've covered WVU in the past and may in the future, and regardless of any of that, I'm going to keep it real when it needs to be kept real. I did a radio hit earlier today on Metro News on a West Virginia outlet, and I told them, I've said this already. Say it on the Corner 3. I've said this on Twitter already, but I told them on West Virginia airwaves that Pitt's going to beat WVU on the hardwood. Pitt's going to win the Backyard Brawl. Right now, Pitt looks better. It's just true. They look better. West Virginia has mightily struggled, been very inconsistent. They don't have a star to carry them through games at all, and neither does really Pitt. Xavier Johnson, Wilson Frame, I mean, they're not going to do that either, despite playing well this year. But WVU has gone through games where they're missing shot after shot after shot, and even in addition to missing shots, they can't rebound to save their life. One of the two has to happen for you to win games. I don't care who you're playing. You got to rebound or you got to hit shots. They've done neither in games and been upset, and even in games they've won, they've done neither. They've really not looked impressive in any game I've watched, and I've watched most of them this season. They really haven't. And last year they were a Sweet 16 team. Granted, they don't have the same starting five by any means. Many of those players are gone. Still have some veterans still there, and Bob Huggins, a Hall of Fame coach in his own right, usually gets the most out of his players. We saw that with Deshaun Butler and the Final Four team for West Virginia in 2010. That was a team that was kind of floundering the previous 2 years. He gets there. He gets the most out of those players, even if he didn't recruit them. And then since then, Sweet 16, Elite 8, there's not denying, and I think Pitt fans would have to agree with this too, The WVU has been a better basketball program in the last 10 years. And Pitt's been good. Pitt was good under Jamie Dixon. They were always an ACC contender, but they didn't go as far in the NCAA tournament. They never went to a Final Four under Jamie Dixon. WVU was able to get there under Bob Huggins and even go further with more Elite Eights, Sweet 16s, etc. in the NCAA tournament. And then the whole Kevin Stallings era, and Pitt went from not going far in the NCAA tournament to not even sniffing it and having a complete embarrassing season last year where they weren't even relevant, couldn't win a conference game, were well out of the NCAA tournament March Madness conversation by now. Really, November and December, you knew they weren't getting in. And the season wasn't more than a month or so old. And West Virginia's coming off a Sweet 16 year. Last year's Mountaineer team was in the Big 12 championship game, almost beating Kansas for the title in the conference. And that's a marquee powerhouse program with a recent Final Four. And West Virginia went to the Sweet 16 in a pretty difficult bracket. That maybe if they were in some other brackets, they would have went further. And I'm not going to defend them at all. The Sweet 16, it should have been more. It wasn't Sweet 16. It's what the Mountaineers do. It's almost heaven. We saw it this year again with football. But they've been a better basketball program over the last 10 years, certainly coming off a better season. Sweet 16 to Pitt, well out of missing the NCAA tournament and firing their coach. In comes Jeff Capel. And it seems to be a polar opposite situation already. I am a WVU alum, but Pitt looks like the better team so far, and I'm not afraid to say it. I got to. And the fans here probably be happy I am, but it's just the case. It's just keeping it real. Now, Pitt went through a few games early in the year against Troy, against teams that aren't going to be contenders, and you're not really impressed with beating them. But in those games, they won handily. So they did what they had to do, and then some. And they, as we talked about on the Corner 3 a couple weeks ago, that Pitt already on the court looks so much better than they were even a year ago. Sure, they're winning games, and at that time it wasn't against high-level competition, but Pitt is diversifying the offense. You're seeing multiple players with 10-plus points, 3 to 4, if not 5 players in double-digit in scoring. Players really finding their role, especially the guard play. A lot more athletic Pitt team, able to stretch the floor more. They're better defensively. They seem to have a plan. I mean, Kale said it. They didn't have a plan. It was run out the clock and pass or shoot, and that was it. They have a plan now. They have an offense. They have a strategy. Jeff Capel has control of this team, and there's a reason why there's a lot more expectations now and a lot of optimism around Pitt fans on this Jeff Capel era. And it's just due. And if any of that wasn't thought of and it needed to be made valid, the game against Iowa shows it. Pitt didn't win. Pitt did not win. Here it is. Pitt drops the heartbreaker to Iowa, 69-68. 1 point. Pitt drops the heartbreaker to Iowa. That's on Pittsburgh Sports Now. Mike Fakovacan penning that article. And it was a heartbreaker, sure. But they looked good in that game. In fact, they almost looked to be the better team throughout a lot of that game. They had a lead even late in that game. They had a lead early on in the second half in that game. They had a 5-plus point lead in that game. And that's an Iowa team that's had some big wins this year. That's a top 15 team. They were number 14 in the country going into that game, and they won, but I don't see them moving much further up. That wasn't really an impressive win for Iowa. They had some shots late, that's all. But you could certainly argue that Pitt let that game slip away. It was a heartbreaker. Vakovacan said it on Pittsburgh Sports Now. That Pitt kind of punted the game away. Some turnovers late, the fact they went cold and didn't hit a shot for several minutes in a row towards the end after they had that lead and kind of squandered it. Pitt could easily feel like that game slipped away. When a season ago they would have got killed by 30 points to an Iowa team like that. But Pitt looks good this year, and they got the city game coming up against Duquesne, who also has actually looked decent, and they've mightily improved. They look good against Notre Dame, losing down the stretch, but that's a major Power 5 team that NCAA tournament recently, and Duquesne does not. So Duquesne, from the A-10. They looked good in that game, even though they didn't win. And they looked good most of the year against who they are playing. But that City League game will be interesting. Pitt will probably win. They're the better team. They're in the major conference, have better players, more athletic, more of even a veteran team. And I got to give Jeff Capel the edge over Keith Dambrot, even though he's also done decent with that Duquesne program this year. But December 8th, Pitt, West Virginia, Pitt, WVU, Backyard Brawl. Morgantown, West Virginia. But Pitt's the better team. They can play that game on the moon. Pitt is the better team. WVU has been way more inconsistent. The way they played this year, they really don't look like they deserve to beat anybody. And they're going to have some conference games that are going to be real tough. I don't know how they're winning more than 7 conference games at this rate. They're just not beating up on teams like they were a year ago. They're not going to probably be able to hang with the Kansas of the world like they were a year ago. A year ago when they had that Oklahoma win, and they almost beat Kansas. I don't see that happening this year. They're just not the kind of players, and they haven't looked that way so far. But Pitt has. And Pitt will have even a tougher stretch after West Virginia. That's not the end of the world. That's not the be-all, end-all for them. It'll be a staple win, even though West Virginia's not looked that good this year. It's still WVU. It's still a great basketball program recently. It's still a reigning Sweet 16 team with a Hall of Fame coach and quality players. They haven't looked good. They played under themselves. Maybe they're picking up for that game. Maybe that'll jumpstart their season. I don't know. I don't think so. I'm kind of predicting a little bit of a miserable year for WVU. But that's not it for Pitt on the hardwood. They got ACC play. You got Duke. You got North Carolina. You got good teams, even Florida State, good teams in the conference. Elite teams. Maybe it's top-heavy, but you have Duke who can win national championship with Zion Williamson, with R.J. Barrett. You have North Carolina, who looks like they're also a national title contender, maybe under Duke, but still a great team with Roy Williams leading the charge. Florida State feels like they should have had some upset wins, and they should maybe be higher ranked than they are and should be better than they are, and maybe laid some eggs they shouldn't have laid this year. And it's kind of how they always are, but they're a good team that can be competitive with you. A lot of ACC teams are down, though. Georgia Tech, Miami, those teams. Pitt should be able to, Wake Forest. Pitt feels like they can get those wins, and there's no reason why they wouldn't be favored in those games with how they're playing so far, but those teams are beating up on them last year. There's going to be a little bit of a revenge tour for Pitt in conference in the ACC. Duke may still beat them by 45 points, easily. North Carolina may beat them by 20, 30, 45 points. And maybe that's a little bit of an exaggeration. 45 might be a bit too much. But Duke should win handily by 20+. North Carolina should win handily by 20+. Nobody else is going to beat up on Pitt like that. They're going to be competitive in those games, even if they don't win more than they lose in the conference. They probably still be below 500 in conference play, maybe at 500, maybe above a little bit. But they're going to lose some conference games. They may lose some games they otherwise shouldn't lose, especially if they don't close games down the stretch that look like an inexperienced team that isn't used to closing out games against quality opponents. That's what it looked like against Iowa. And it cost them a win that if they're going to be on the March Madness bubble, if they're looking for the NCAA tournament and not winning the conference because Duke's going to win that conference, then they're going to need those type of wins to bolster their resume. It's a big deal. Overall body of work and resume, they're brought up for college football, and I like to use them myself, but not everybody does. In college basketball, it's unanimous. Overall body of work and resume are a big deal. You got to have those wins. And a win against a top 15 Iowa team, number 14 coming into the game, one of the best shooting teams in the country, already with staple wins on their resume. If Pitt could have got that win on the road in the ACC Big Ten Challenge, which easily they should have with how they were playing early, kind of squandering and punting away the game, as they feel it's really their own fault they lost that game more than Iowa beating them. If Pitt would have had that win, that's a big one for the resume, especially out of conference. Big one for the resume. When you're trying to decide, do I take another Big Ten, another ACC team, middle of the pack teams in the conference play? Nope, I'll take Pitt because they beat a top 15 team that's one of the top few teams in the Big Ten. That could have been the conversation. But no, Pitt loses. They don't have the staple win. But maybe West Virginia can be the out-of-conference staple win. If the Mountaineers can crawl back into some relevancy and in the top 25 where they normally belong and can get back to where teams thought they would be. They came into the year ranked 13th in the country, so they were predicted to be a quality team again and be a top 15 team like they usually have been under Bob Huggins. If they get back there with Conti and company, then okay. Then that's a staple win. If they don't and the season ends up just being collapsed, then maybe that win won't be looked upon that well. But those are the type of wins that Pitt almost needs to get if they're going to get in the tournament, because they're probably not going to be able to beat up on those elite teams in conference play. They certainly won't. And then maybe we'll lose a game or two there. Syracuse, another one of those teams in conference play that Pitt's going to probably lose to, even though they've looked vulnerable this year losing to UConn. But Syracuse is a better team than Pitt. They're more athletic. They're going to be an elite team that's ranked higher than Pitt overall in the ACC. So probably a loss, if not a close game, but probably a loss. But I'll tell you right now, and I'm thinking with my mind more than my heart on this one. That Pitt is going to win the Backyard Brawl on the hardwood. Pitt is going to win the basketball version of the Backyard Brawl, and Pitt is going to beat WVU in basketball on December 8th. I'm confident to say it. I'll throw it out there, throw it out in the universe. And often I would rather be right than get what I want to happen, because being right is kind of what I do want anyway. So I'm borderline rooting for this now. I've been saying it for weeks. I was saying it ahead of everybody else. I'm saying it on the airwaves for Pittsburgh and for West Virginia. I'm all over the place with this prediction. And now I kind of want it to be able to show it in everybody's face. But yeah, Pitt's going to beat WVU. WVU's been way too inconsistent, and Pitt's looked good this year. In fact, should still be undefeated and should have that win over Iowa, a big resume bolster. They don't, but West Virginia's not as good as Iowa. And if Pitt can do that to Iowa, if Pitt can figure out how to close games, and maybe they'll do that in the city game. If Jeff Cable can continue to have charge of this team and really get everybody to fit into their roles and truly coach them up like it seems like he's been doing, there's a reason for optimism around Pitt basketball in the Jeff Cable era so soon after no reason for optimism and just really down in the dumps embarrassment that was the Kevin Stallings era in Pitt's 2017-2018 season. 2018-2019, and Pitt played WVU well last year too, despite how embarrassing they were as a team overall. They played WVU well. That is an embarrassing Pitt team that was irrelevant, far out of the race for the tournament, playing well and close against the Mountaineers team that went to the Sweet 16 and was in the conference championship game losing to Kansas, who was a Final Four, top 5, top 10 team throughout the year. That shows a lot. Similar WVU team that's playing worse and more inconsistent versus a Pitt team that is mightily different, more athletic, better guard play, veterans that are fitting into a system, a coach that seems to know what he's doing more, and a sense of urgency to win games. So that's going to be one for Pitt. Chalk it up. Pitt will beat West Virginia and win the basketball version of the Backyard Brawl. Now, I'm not going to get anything out there. We're not going to get sun. I forget what even the sun looks like. But regardless whether the sun's out there or not, it was a golden quality show, even if it doesn't have the sun shining down. So this has been another gold quality edition of Mic Drop on Pittsburgh Sports Live. Make sure to click subscribe to us on our YouTube channel. Make sure to find our website, Pittsburgh Sports Now, where you get that Pitt coverage, including what will be a winner over WVU in the Backyard Brawl. I'm sure they go full-fledged for that one. Pittsburgh Soccer Now, Pittsburgh Hockey Now with Kongursky's outlet, and running to get back on the Penguins bandwagon are the fans now, just sprinting over there. You can feel the breeze now and see them out there in the streets. Penguin fans rushing to get back on the bandwagon after the Pens win against Winnipeg, a sexy cup final pick for many of you out there. And find us, Pittsburgh Sports Live's audio, visual, golden quality content at pghsportslive.com. It's where I throw it all up there, and it lives for all eternity for your viewing pleasure. Click subscribe. Follow us on Twitter at PGH Sports Live. Follow me on Twitter at MikeAsti11. And this has been another episode of Mic Drop on Pittsburgh Sports Live from the Beaver County Auto Studios. Find them, beavercountyauto.com. I'm Mike Asti, conquering sports radio one day at a time.